She used to laugh about it in interviews, that she'd never leave Hollywood quietly. "If I go," she once said, "someone better make it weird." No one realized she meant it. When the headlines appeared this morning, it wasn't noise that filled the air. It was an uncanny stillness, the kind that feels scripted. Diane Keaton was gone at 79, and yet somehow her presence was everywhere. In the quotes, in the old interviews suddenly resurfacing, in that voice that made truth sound like a confession. What shook people wasn't just the loss, it was the pattern. Fans scrolling through her last few posts began to notice it. The black and white photo, the caption about unfinished stories, the sudden silence that followed. They weren't random moments. They felt like messages, the kind you only decode after it's too late. Industry friends started calling each other before the news even hit television. Directors, actors, stylists, everyone remembering odd little conversations from recent weeks. A lunch she canceled without explanation. A script she suddenly turned down. A long, thoughtful voicemail to an old co-star that ended with, "Let's talk soon. Really talk." No cause was given. No statement beyond respect for privacy. And that's when the speculation began. Because for someone who built an entire career on being transparent, the silence felt deliberate. And if that was deliberate, what exactly was Diane Keaton trying to tell us before she left? When the statement finally arrived, it was barely 2 sentences long. Diane Keaton passed away peacefully. The family requests privacy at this time. That was it. No medical note, no hospital mention, not even the usual "surrounded by loved ones." And that brevity, that heavy silence, did something no gossip column could have orchestrated. It made the world suspicious. Within hours, tabloids scrambled to fill the void. Some whispered that she'd been unwell for months. Others insisted she'd been perfectly fine, spotted just weeks earlier laughing with friends in Beverly Hills. A producer claimed she'd been considering a new project. A family acquaintance said she'd recently withdrawn from everyone. Every account contradicted the next, like puzzle pieces from entirely different pictures. Fans did what fans always do when answers vanish. They became detectives. Her Instagram, once filled with soft humor and candid moments, turned into a forensic archive. That final photo, posted just days before she was gone, showed her standing by a window, sunlight spilling across her face. The caption was short, "Still searching for the right light." At first, it seemed like another artsy reflection from a woman who loved playing with imagery. But now, it reads differently. Like a goodbye no one recognized. On Reddit and X, threads exploded overnight. Side-by-side comparisons of her recent appearances, speculations about health, even theories about a secret project she never got to announce. It was chaos mixed with grief, and underneath it all ran one uncomfortable truth. For the first time in her entire career, Diane Keaton's story wasn't being told by her. And that silence felt like a cliffhanger left unfinished. Long before the fame, before the Oscars, before anyone ever called her a legend, she was just Diane Hall, a girl from Los Angeles with a stubborn streak and a dream that didn't fit inside her neighborhood. Her father worked in real estate. Her mother wrote, dreamed, created. And somewhere in that ordinary California household, Diane found her spark. The need to be seen not for glamour, but for truth. In her early 20s, she packed a suitcase, moved to New York, and joined the neighborhood playhouse. A decision most of her friends called reckless. She waited tables, lived off coffee and hope, and auditioned for plays that turned her down more times than she could count. Every rejection letter became a kind of motivation. Every closed door, a challenge. And it was in those tiny off-Broadway theaters, with flickering lights and folding chairs, that the real Diane Keaton was born. She wasn't chasing stardom. She was chasing honesty. Even when casting directors told her she was too quirky, too awkward, or not leading lady material, she didn't bend. She leaned into it. That's what fans always loved about her. She made being imperfect look powerful. She made strange feel beautiful. She turned insecurity into charisma, and audiences could feel it. You didn't just watch Diane Keaton. You related to her. It started with a phone call she almost ignored. A casting assistant asking if she could come in for a small part in a mob movie directed by a man named Francis Ford Coppola. At the time, The Godfather wasn't a legend, it was a gamble. Diane walked into that audition wearing thrift store clothes and nerves disguised as confidence. She wasn't the obvious choice for Kay Adams, the soft-spoken girlfriend to Michael Corleone. Studio executives thought she was too offbeat, too unpredictable. But Coppola saw something others didn't. Vulnerability wrapped in quiet defiance. From the moment she stood opposite Al Pacino, something clicked. Their chemistry wasn't loud or performative, it was electric in silence. When Pacino's Michael transformed into the cold, ruthless leader of the Corleone Empire, it was Diane's eyes, trembling but unbroken, that made audiences feel the weight of his choices. She didn't have to speak much. Every glance told the story. On set, she wasn't like the others. While other actors rehearsed lines, Diane studied silence. How stillness could say more than words. That emotional depth became her trademark. The role changed everything. Overnight, she went from a New York stage actress with rent problems to the woman Hollywood couldn't stop talking about. She returned for The Godfather Part 2 and Part 3, bringing more intensity each time. A woman caught between love and moral collapse. But what the public didn't see was the toll it took. Playing Kay meant living in emotional contradictions, and that weight followed her long after the cameras stopped rolling. Still, it wasn't The Godfather that would define her. It was a new kind of love story, one that blurred the line between fiction and reality. Because that partnership with Woody Allen would change everything, on screen and off. When Annie Hall hit theaters in 1977, audiences thought they were watching a love story. What they didn't realize was that they were watching her. Woody Allen didn't just write the role for Diane Keaton. He wrote it about her. The clothes, the cadence, even the name Annie Hall came straight from her real life. Every stammer, every nervous laugh, every awkward brilliance wasn't acting. It was Diane, unfiltered. Their connection was undeniable. On screen, they were electric. Off-screen, they were something far more complicated. Friends, partners, collaborators, and maybe something deeper that neither ever fully explained. The lines between fiction and reality blurred until no one could tell where the performance ended and real emotion began. Rumors spread, not of scandal, but of heartbreak. Friends close to both described their relationship as intensely private, but emotionally raw. He understood her humor. She understood his chaos. Together, they built characters that felt painfully real because they were real. Born from two people trying to translate their connection into art. Annie Hall changed everything. It wasn't just a movie. It was a cultural earthquake. She didn't just win the Oscar for Best Actress. She reinvented what femininity could look like on screen. The oversized men's shirts, the baggy pants, the vest, the tie. They weren't costumes. They were hers. Suddenly, every magazine wanted the Keaton look. Every woman wanted that fearless mix of confidence and chaos. But behind that effortless charm, there was something fragile. A kind of vulnerability that audiences could feel but couldn't name. She once said, "It's dangerous to be known too well." And maybe that's why she never let anyone fully in again. The film made her immortal, but it also captured a version of her she could never fully escape. Hollywood in the late 70s and 80s was a circus. Glitter, ego, and headlines that fed on chaos. Stars imploded in front of cameras, scandals became careers, and authenticity was the rarest currency of all. But somehow, Diane Keaton managed to stay untouched by the noise. While others were fighting for center stage, she quietly kept rewriting what it meant to be a star. No entourages, No club appearances, no public meltdowns. She'd finish a shoot, take off her makeup, and go home to her books and her children. She didn't need to play the game because her talent already broke every rule. Jack Nicholson called her fearless in her softness. Steve Martin once said sharing a scene with Diane felt less like acting and more like remembering something true. She made superstardom feel human, and that's why audiences trusted her. And yet, for someone who radiated ease, those closest to her knew there was another side. Quiet battles no one saw. Friends said she could make a room laugh for an hour and still leave you wondering what she was really feeling. Behind that calm grace, there were private battles she never talked about. For all her fame, Diane Keaton never lived the kind of Hollywood life people expected. She never married. Instead, she chose something the industry rarely celebrates: independence. She adopted 2 children, Dexter and Duke, and raised them on her terms. Her past relationships read like a who's who of Hollywood royalty: Woody Allen, Al Pacino, Warren Beatty. But none ended in the fairy tale the press kept waiting for. She loved deeply, but she valued her solitude more. She once said, "I didn't want to give up my life for someone else's version of happiness." That line resonated with women everywhere. She was proof that fulfillment didn't have to come from a ring or a man or a perfect picture of domestic bliss. Success, for her, was living honestly, even if it meant walking alone. To the world, she was the cool, eccentric legend who aged gracefully and unapologetically. But to those who knew her best, she was simply a woman who refused to let the world tell her who she should be. And maybe that's why her final posts now feel so hauntingly symbolic. Not because they were tragic, but because they were true. When people went back to Diane Keaton's Instagram after the announcement, what they found didn't look like a farewell. At least, not at first. The photos were warm, familiar, almost ordinary. A black turtleneck, a sunlit window, a half-finished cup of tea. But the tone beneath them felt different. Her last post came just 3 days before her passing. It showed her standing in her garden, holding a weathered notebook. Her caption simple: "Still learning how to say goodbye beautifully." At the time, fans thought it was poetic. Diane, being Diane, reflective as always. But in hindsight, it sounds hauntingly final. The comments section, once filled with playful banter, became a flood of heartbreak overnight. "Was this a sign?" one fan wrote. "Did she know something we didn't?" another asked. Within hours, digital detectives were dissecting every caption, every hashtag, looking for patterns that might explain the silence that followed. Unconfirmed reports began to surface. Whispers that she'd been quietly managing health concerns for some time. Other sources close to the family insisted she'd been vibrant and laughing just a week earlier. There was no official cause of death, and that absence of clarity became its own storm. Was it sudden? Was it expected? Or was she simply protecting her privacy until the very end? Those who knew her best say that privacy was her sanctuary. She often spoke about the difference between mystery and secrecy, how one preserves the soul while the other hides it. Maybe this was her final act of self-protection, a decision to leave quietly, without spectacle, in an industry addicted to noise. The eerie calm before the announcement now feels intentional. No leaks, no insiders rushing to break the story. Just a perfectly silent exit from a woman who had mastered timing her entire life. And as her followers scrolled through her feed, one truth kept echoing in the comment sections. Even in her final moments, Diane Keaton managed to make silence feel profound.